Chosen one, are you tired of feeling like your prayers bounce off heaven's ceiling like rubber balls? Have you whispered into the darkness so many nights, wondering if the Almighty has put you on some cosmic waiting list while everyone else gets their breakthrough? Do you lie awake at 3 a.m., staring at that same water stain on your bedroom ceiling, questioning whether that decision you made in faith, that choice that cost you everything, whether it mattered at all? Stop. Right there. What if I told you something so shocking, so impossible, that your mind will reject it but your spirit will leap? What if I told you that your last decision, that quiet moment when you chose obedience over comfort, faith over fear, didn't just register in heaven, it shifted heaven's entire plan? One decision, so quiet, so hidden, that the world never noticed. Like a single domino flicked in silence, it tipped the balance of eternity itself. And tonight, dear chosen one, I'm going to prove to you that heaven didn't just hear you, heaven rewrote the script because of you. You see, while you've been carrying shame about your age, your limitations, your so-called failures, while you've been listening to the devil whisper that your season has passed, that your prayers don't carry weight anymore, that God uses younger vessels now, something earth-shattering has been happening in the unseen realm. The angels have been repositioning, divine appointments have been rearranged, generational curses tied to your bloodline have been snapping like old chains in a furnace. Not because you're perfect, but because you said yes when yes was dangerous. Before we journey deeper into this mystery together, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating. You're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let the Holy Spirit lead your heart. But listen carefully, because what I'm about to reveal will shatter every lie you've believed about your significance. Your last decision didn't just change your circumstances, it forced heaven to rewrite its strategy for your entire family tree. If your spirit is stirring right now, if something deep inside you just whispered, "Yes, this is for me," type, "I receive it" in the comments. Because today's word is not random, it's your confirmation that the shift has already begun. Are you ready to discover what happens when one elderly saint's obedience makes the Almighty change his mind? Why do you think your sleep has been restless lately? Why does that familiar chair in your living room suddenly feel like it belongs to someone else? Why are you catching yourself staring out windows, feeling homesick for a place you can't name? Because heaven just rearranged the board, and when God moves the pieces, everything tied to your life has to shift positions. You see, dear chosen one, you've been living under yesterday's rules, operating by last season's limitations, accepting boundaries that expired. The moment you made that decision, that whispered prayer at midnight when arthritis pain kept you awake, that choice to forgive when your heart wanted revenge, that moment you chose integrity when compromise would have been easier. You thought it was just another small step of obedience. Heaven recorded it as the move that changed everything. Picture this. Imagine you're watching a chess match between two grandmasters. The game has been going on for hours, every piece locked in battle, every move calculated, the outcome seemingly inevitable. Then suddenly, one player makes an unexpected sacrifice, gives up their queen to save a lowly pawn. The crowd gasps. The rules haven't changed, but the entire dynamic has shifted. What looked like certain defeat becomes unstoppable victory. That's exactly what happened in the spiritual realm because of your last decision. Isaiah 43:19 declares something that should make your spirit leap. "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." Did you catch that? God says, now. It springs up present tense, happening right now, not someday in the future. But here's what breaks my heart. While heaven is celebrating your breakthrough, you're still living like you're under the old system, still apologizing for taking up space, still believing the lie that your best years are behind you, still accepting limitations that God just erased with one stroke of his mighty hand. Listen to me carefully. The conversations about you in heaven have changed. The angels assigned to your case just received new orders. The demons that have been harassing your family for generations just got their walking papers. Not because you suddenly became perfect, but because your obedience triggered a divine reset. Some of you are already feeling it, aren't you? That strange sense that something fundamental has shifted. Rooms that once welcomed you now feel suffocating. People look at you differently but can't explain why. That grandson who used to dismiss your faith suddenly asks for prayer. That neighbor who avoided eye contact now lingers on your porch, hungry for the peace they sense around you. You're not imagining it. That's what happens when God rearranges the board. But let me shock you with something even deeper. This reset didn't just affect your immediate circumstances. It sent shockwaves through your entire bloodline. That addiction that's plagued your family for 3 generations. The financial curse that seemed unbreakable. The pattern of broken marriages. Your one decision just snapped those chains like they were made of paper. Think about Moses standing at the Red Sea. 2 million Israelites behind him. Pharaoh's army charging from behind. Impossible waters stretching ahead. Everything looked hopeless until God said, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward." One step of faith, and the sea split. The rules of physics bowed to the will of heaven. Your step of faith just did the same thing. The natural laws that held you captive just submitted to supernatural intervention. But here's where it gets controversial, and I need you to brace yourself for this truth. Not everyone in your life is going to celebrate this shift. Some people were comfortable with the old version of you. They knew how to manipulate your insecurities, how to make you feel small, how to keep you in your designated corner. But that version of you just died, and they can sense it. This is why you might feel resistance rising around you, why certain relationships suddenly feel strained, why some people seem agitated in your presence without being able to explain why. They're not upset with you personally, they're responding to the authority you now carry, an authority that makes comfortable sin uncomfortable. Moses experienced this same phenomenon. Exodus 34-30 tells us that when he came down from Mount Sinai, his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. But notice what happened next. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. Intimacy with God changes your frequency, and not everyone can handle the new wavelength you're broadcasting. This is why the enemy has been whispering lies in your ear. You're too old to change anything. Your influence is over. Nobody listens to seniors anymore. He knows that if you ever fully grasp what your obedience just unleashed, his kingdom will never recover. But let me tell you what's really happening in the spiritual realm right now. Every time you doubted whether your prayers mattered, angels were positioning themselves around your requests. Every tear you cried thinking God had forgotten you, heaven was collecting in golden bowls. Every night you chose faith over fear, you were depositing authority into your spiritual account. And your last decision, it was the final deposit that caused heaven's bank to declare, "This account is now ready for unlimited withdrawal." The old rules that said you had to beg for breakthrough? Cancelled. The limitations that said miracles were for other people? Deleted. The timeline that said your season was over? Completely rewritten. You're not the same person who woke up this morning. You're not operating under the same spiritual laws. You're not bound by the same restrictions. The board has been reset. The game has changed. And this time, chosen one, you don't just win, you dominate. But what does this divine reset actually look like when it hits your everyday life? What happens when heaven's new rules collide with your Monday morning reality? You know what breaks my heart? It's the sound of silence at 7 p.m. on a Sunday evening. You remember when your phone used to ring, don't you? When Sunday dinners meant a house full of voices, laughter echoing off the kitchen walls, grandchildren running through rooms that now sit empty, except for the ticking of that old clock your mother left you. But now, Now the silence is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Your children call less. When they do, it's hurried. Sorry, Mom, I've got to run. The kids have practice. Your friends from church, some have passed on to glory, others have moved to Florida or Arizona, and the few remaining seem to live in a different world than you do. You sit in that same pew you've occupied for 30 years, surrounded by people, yet feeling more alone than when you're actually by yourself. And the enemy whispers, doesn't he? He slides up next to you in those quiet moments and says, "See, this is proof. You're forgotten. You're irrelevant. Your season is over. Even God has moved on without you." But wait. Stop right there. What if I told you something that's going to shatter that lie into a million pieces? What if the isolation you're experiencing isn't rejection, it's recognition? What if heaven is pulling you away from what can no longer contain who you're becoming? Think about a snake for a moment. When it's time to grow, that old skin doesn't gradually stretch to accommodate the new size, number. It becomes tight, uncomfortable, restrictive. The snake has to shed it completely, every inch of the old covering that once protected it but now suffocates its growth. And during that shedding process, the snake is vulnerable, alone, hidden away from everything familiar. That's you right now, dear one. You're not being abandoned, you're outgrowing what can no longer contain you. Remember Moses? For 40 years, he was surrounded by the familiar, the palace, the privilege, the applause of Egypt. But when God's time came, where did he lead Moses? Into the wilderness, alone, away from everything and everyone Moses had known. For another 40 years, Moses tended sheep in isolation while his destiny was being forged in solitude. The Israelites didn't know Moses' name during those 40 wilderness years. History forgot him. But God was preparing him for something so magnificent that it required complete separation from his old life. Every closed door in your life hasn't been rejection, it's been heaven pulling you into a bigger room. But here's where it gets deeper. Here's where the mystery unfolds in ways that will leave you breathless. That phone that stopped ringing, those invitations that dried up, those relationships that grew cold. What if God allowed that isolation because he knew that the people in your old circle couldn't handle the version of you that he's about to unveil? What if their rejection was actually divine protection, not just for you, but for them? You see, when God decides to elevate someone, when he's about to pour out unprecedented favor, he often removes them from environments that would either corrupt the blessing or be destroyed by its magnitude. Your isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. Look at Joseph, 17 years old, surrounded by 11 brothers, loved by his father. But when the dreams came, when heaven downloaded his destiny, what happened? His own family threw him in a pit, sold him to strangers. He spent the next 13 years in absolute isolation from everything familiar. Slavery, prison, forgotten by those he helped. But Genesis 41-41 tells us that Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." In one day, Joseph went from the prison to the palace. Why? Because the isolation had prepared him for a responsibility that would have crushed the 17-year-old version of himself. The loneliness you're feeling isn't evidence of God's absence, it's evidence of his precision. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How long are you going to let the enemy convince you that your best days are behind you? How long are you going to believe that the silence in your life means heaven has hung up on you? How long are you going to accept the lie that your season of significance is over? Because I'm here to tell you that Jeremiah 29-11 isn't just a pretty verse for greeting cards. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." Your future, not your past. Your future has been rewritten by heaven's own hand. Every door that slammed shut was God protecting your destiny. Every relationship that faded was heaven removing what would have hindered your assignment. Every moment of loneliness was actually sacred solitude, God creating space for something so powerful that it requires undivided attention. Right now, While you feel most alone, heaven is most active on your behalf. Angels are moving. Divine appointments are being arranged. Doors that have been sealed for decades are about to swing open with such force that the sound will echo through your family tree for generations. If this is resonating in your spirit, if something deep inside you is confirming that your isolation has been preparation, don't just sit back and absorb this word. Share this message right now. Someone in your circle is sitting in their own empty house, wondering if God has forgotten them. They need to hear this confirmation that their winter is about to give way to an unprecedented spring. The snake is almost finished shedding. The new skin is nearly ready. And when you emerge from this season of separation, the world won't recognize the transformed version of who you've become. But are you ready to discover what God has been building in the secret place while the world thought you were simply getting older? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. That decision you made, that moment when you chose to trust God instead of trusting your bank account, when you chose forgiveness instead of revenge, when you chose to stay faithful instead of walking away, you thought it was just about you, didn't you? You thought you were just another senior citizen making another quiet choice in another empty room while the world spun on without noticing. But what if I told you that your obedience sent shockwaves through the spirit realm that are still rippling through dimensions you can't even see? What if that choice you made in your living room at 2 a.m. shifted the trajectory of bloodlines you'll never meet? Your obedience isn't personal, beloved. It's generational. Think about Joseph for a moment. One Hebrew slave boy, falsely accused, rotting in an Egyptian prison. He had every right to curse God, every reason to give up, every excuse to let bitterness poison his soul. But in that dark cell, Joseph made a choice. He chose to trust God's plan, even when God's plan looked like abandonment. Genesis 50:20 records his words. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. The saving of many lives. Joseph thought he was just surviving prison. God was using his faithfulness to save nations from famine. One man's obedience in darkness became the lifeline for millions. But you're thinking, that's Joseph. That's Bible times. I'm just trying to make it through another day in Queens, in Detroit, in small-town Ohio. Stop diminishing yourself. Look at Harriet Tubman, a 5-foot-tall woman born into slavery, suffering seizures from a head injury that left her with vivid spiritual visions. The world called her crazy. But when God whispered go, she went. 19 trips back into slave territory, 300 souls led to freedom, not one lost. But here's what they don't teach you in history class. Harriet's decision to follow those visions didn't just free the people she led, it shifted the entire Underground Railroad. It inspired other conductors. It gave courage to abolitionists who had been silent. One woman's yes to God's impossible calling helped crack the foundation of slavery itself. Your last decision carries that same cosmic weight. The enemy wasn't afraid of your past, chosen one. He was terrified of what your last choice unleashed in your future. He knew that when you chose faith over fear, when you chose obedience over comfort, you didn't just change your circumstances, you activated something in the spirit realm that would echo through your children's children's children. Right now, as I'm speaking these words, there are great-grandchildren not yet born whose destinies shifted the moment you said yes to God. There are financial curses in your family line that snapped the instant you chose to tithe when you couldn't afford to tithe. There are addictions that will never touch your bloodline because you chose sobriety when sobriety felt impossible. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Your grandmother's prayers, your mother's tears, your own decades of intercession, they all converged in that moment when you made the hard choice. And now angels are being repositioned, divine appointments are being rearranged, and hell itself is scrambling to contain the damage your obedience just caused to their kingdom. But I need you to grasp something that will shatter every limitation you've placed on yourself. You keep thinking your age disqualifies you from making moves that matter. You keep believing that your season of impact is over, that God uses younger vessels for kingdom assignments. That's not just wrong, it's demonic. Moses was 80 years old when God called him to deliver Israel. 80. Sarah was 90 when she birthed nations. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your wrinkles aren't disqualifications, they're credentials. Your gray hair isn't evidence of decline, it's a crown of wisdom earned through decades of trusting God through impossible circumstances. The decision you made not to give up when your spouse died, it wasn't just about you learning to live alone. It shifted the atmosphere in your family. Your children watched you choose faith over despair, and something in their spirit said, "If Mom can make it through this, maybe we can make it through anything." The choice you made to forgive that family member who hurt you decades ago, it didn't just free you from bitterness. It broke a generational pattern of unforgiveness that had been poisoning your family tree for 100 years. The moment you decided to trust God with your fixed income, instead of hoarding every penny in fear, you didn't just open your hands to God's provision. You opened a pipeline of blessing that will flow to your descendants for generations. This is why the warfare has been so intense around your life lately. This is why the enemy has been throwing everything he's got at your health, your peace, your relationships. Because he can see what's coming. He can see the ripple effect your obedience is about to create, and he's desperate to stop it. But it's too late. The choice has been made. The stone has been thrown into the cosmic pond, and the ripples are already spreading in ways that will amaze you, terrify your enemies, and rewrite the story of everyone connected to your name. The question burning in heaven right now isn't whether your choice mattered. The question is, are you ready to see how far the ripples reach? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Something's been happening to you lately that's got you questioning everything. The pressure isn't lighter, it's heavier. Those old temptations you thought you'd buried years ago, they're clawing their way back to the surface like zombies in a graveyard. That addiction you conquered in your 50s is whispering sweet lies again. That bitterness toward your ex-spouse that you forgave and released, it's knocking on your heart's door at 2 a.m. like an unwelcome visitor. And you're asking yourself the same question that's been haunting your mind for weeks. God, if I really made the right decision, if I really heard you correctly, then why does everything feel harder now? Why is the spiritual warfare more intense? Why do I feel like I'm fighting battles I already won? Dear one, let me shock you with a truth that's going to turn your understanding upside down. The increased resistance isn't proof that you failed, it's proof that you've already won. You see, the enemy doesn't waste his best ammunition on people who pose no threat. Satan doesn't deploy his fiercest demons against believers who are stuck in neutral. Hell doesn't mobilize its darkest forces against saints who are playing it safe in their comfort zones. But when someone, especially someone in their 70s, 80s, 90s, when someone with decades of accumulated wisdom and refined faith makes a decision that threatens the very foundations of darkness, all hell breaks loose. Literally. Think about this for a moment. When did Pharaoh's heart grow hardest? Right before the Red Sea parted. When did the storm rage most violently? Right before Jesus spoke peace. When did the pressure on Daniel intensify? Right before the lions' mouths were shut. When did the fire burn hottest for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Right before the fourth man appeared in the flames. The resistance you're feeling isn't random. It's strategic. It's calculated. It's hell's desperate attempt to convince you to reverse the very decision that shifted heaven's plan in your favor. But here's what the enemy didn't count on. He's shown his hand too early. By attacking you so viciously, he's revealed something profound. You're carrying something he desperately wants to stop. Your last decision didn't just change your personal circumstances. It triggered a domino effect that's about to topple strongholds that have been standing for generations. Let me paint you a picture that will make this crystal clear. Imagine you're watching a chess match between a master and a novice. For the first hour, it looks like the master is dominating. The novice appears cornered, trapped, with nowhere to move. Everyone in the room, the spectators, the commentators, even the novice himself assumes the game is over. The master sits back, confident in his inevitable victory. But then, in one unexpected moment, the novice makes a move that nobody saw coming. A quiet move, a simple move. But suddenly, the entire board shifts. The master's face goes pale. The spectators gasp, because in that instant, everyone realizes that what looked like defeat was actually the setup for the most stunning victory they've ever witnessed. That's exactly where you are right now, chosen one. The enemy thought he had you cornered. Your family thought your best days were behind you. Society wrote you off as irrelevant. Even you began to question whether God still had plans for someone your age. But then you made that decision, that quiet, faithful, obedient decision. And suddenly, the entire spiritual board tilted in your favor. Now the enemy is scrambling. He's throwing everything he's got at you, not because you're losing, but because he finally realizes you're winning. The resistance you're experiencing is his panic attack. It's hell's desperate attempt to make you think you made the wrong choice, to convince you to retreat back to safety, to return to the small, quiet life where you pose no threat to his kingdom. But here's what Revelation 12:12 warns us. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short. When the enemy knows his time is up, when he realizes he's about to lose something significant, he doesn't go quietly, he goes out swinging. That's why your temptations feel more intense now. That's why the voices of doubt are screaming louder. That's why people who used to support you are suddenly questioning your decisions. That's why your own mind is working overtime to convince you that you misheard God's voice. But let me tell you something that will anchor your soul in this storm. 2 Timothy 3:12 declares, "Indeed, all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution." Notice it doesn't say might suffer persecution. It says will suffer persecution. The resistance isn't a sign you're off track, it's confirmation you're on the right one. The Apostle Paul understood this principle when he wrote in 1 Corinthians 16:9, "A great door for effective work has opened to me, and there are many who oppose me." Did you catch that? A great door opened and there was great opposition. The two go hand in hand. When God opens doors of destiny, the enemy stations guards to try to keep you from walking through them. So let me ask you a question that's going to cut straight to your heart. Are you going to let the enemy's panic attack convince you to abort the very mission that has heaven mobilizing on your behalf? Are you going to retreat back to mediocrity because the path to your miracle feels uncomfortable? Because here's what's about to happen. The same resistance that's trying to stop you is about to become the evidence of your breakthrough. Every temptation you overcome now carries double weight in the spirit realm. Every lie you reject strengthens your spiritual authority. Every moment you stand firm in your decision, heaven takes notice and adjusts the atmosphere around your life. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you next will prove that heaven is already confirming this shift in ways you never imagined. The signs are everywhere, you just need to know how to read them. Now listen to me carefully, chosen one, because what I'm about to tell you will explain every strange thing that's been happening in your life lately. You've felt it, haven't you? That shift in the atmosphere around you, that sense that something fundamental has changed, but you can't quite put your finger on what. You thought it was your imagination. You thought maybe you were just getting older, more sensitive, reading too much into everyday moments. But what if I told you that what you've been sensing isn't in your head, it's heaven's fingerprints all over your circumstances? Let me ask you something that might cut deep. How many times in the past month have you walked into a room and felt the energy change? How many conversations have suddenly gone quiet when you approached? How many people who used to call regularly have mysteriously gone silent? You've been blaming yourself, haven't you? Wondering if you said something wrong, if you've somehow become less lovable in your golden years. Stop right there. That's not rejection, that's recognition. That's heaven pulling you out of spaces that can no longer contain who you're becoming. Think about Elijah on Mount Carmel. For 3.5 years, there had been no rain. The land was cracked. The rivers were dry, the people were desperate. But then Elijah prayed 7 times, and his servant saw something that would change everything, a cloud, the size of a man's hand rising from the sea. 1 Kings 18:44 records it perfectly. A little cloud like a man's hand is rising from the sea. Just a small cloud, barely visible on the horizon. But Elijah knew what that tiny sign meant. He told his servant, "Go up, say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, lest the rain stop you." Because when heaven decides to move, even the smallest sign carries the weight of supernatural intervention. That's exactly what's happening in your life right now. You're seeing clouds the size of a man's hand, and you need to understand what they mean. For some of you, the first sign has been sudden favor. People who barely noticed you before are going out of their way to help. Doors are opening that you never even knocked on. Your name is surfacing in conversations you never entered. A neighbor who's lived next to you for 15 years suddenly brings you homemade soup. A cashier at the grocery store remembers your name and asks about your grandchildren. Your doctor spends extra time with you, explaining things he used to rush through. You think it's coincidence? You think people just suddenly got kinder? No, beloved. The atmosphere around you has shifted because heaven has shifted its strategy concerning your life. But here's where it gets even more profound. For others of you, the signs look like subtraction, not addition. Invitations have stopped coming to places you used to frequent. Friends who used to call every week have gone mysteriously quiet. Family gatherings feel awkward now, like you don't quite fit the same way anymore. That book club you've attended for 5 years suddenly feels shallow and empty. The church you've served faithfully for decades feels cold and distant, and you've been interpreting this as loss. You've been crying yourself to sleep, wondering what you did wrong, why everyone is pulling away from you. But what if I told you this isn't abandonment, this is divine extraction? When a snake outgrows its skin, the old covering doesn't get bigger to accommodate the growth. It has to be shed completely, and that shedding process can feel violent, uncomfortable, even painful. But it's not destruction, it's necessary expansion. God is pulling you out of rooms that can't hold who you're becoming. He's removing you from environments that would suffocate your new assignment. He's extracting you from relationships that would limit the authority he's about to release through you. Then there are those of you experiencing the most dramatic sign of all unexplainable provision. Money showing up from sources you never expected. Insurance checks arriving for claims you forgot you filed. Tax refunds larger than they should be. Rebates on purchases you made months ago. Bills getting mysteriously paid by anonymous benefactors. Medical expenses being covered by funds you didn't know existed. Your logical mind is trying to explain it all away. It's just good fortune. These things happen sometimes, but your spirit knows better. Your spirit recognizes the supernatural when it sees it. Let me tell you about provision that defies explanation. When the widow of Zarephath was down to her last meal, literally her final handful of flour and drop of oil, Elijah asked her to feed him first. And what happened? 1 Kings 17:16 tells us, "The jar of flour was not spent, neither did the jug of oil become empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah." That wasn't natural. That wasn't coincidence. That was heaven intervening in the economics of earth because someone aligned themselves with God's purposes. Your unexpected provision isn't luck. It's heaven funding your next assignment. It's God making sure you have what you need for the journey he's about to take you on. But here's the truth that will shake you to your core. These aren't separate random events happening in your life. They're all connected. They're all part of the same divine strategy. The favor, the extraction, the provision, they're all heaven's fingerprints on your circumstances, proving that your last decision triggered a complete rewrite of your story. You're not in the same game anymore. The rules that applied to you yesterday don't apply today. The limitations that boxed you in last month have been shattered. The outcome that looked impossible just weeks ago is now inevitable. And if you've seen even one of these signs, if favor has found you unexpectedly, if you've been extracted from places that no longer fit, if provision has shown up in ways you can't explain, then you need to declare it right now. If you've seen even one sign of this shift, declare it in the comments. The board has changed. Because acknowledgement activates acceleration. And what you're about to discover next will prove that this shift isn't just affecting your personal life, it's rippling through generations connected to your bloodline. Listen to me, chosen one. You're standing at a crossroads right now, and what you do with this revelation will determine whether you step into your rewritten destiny or crawl back into the coffin of your old limitations. Here's what's happening in the spiritual realm as I speak these words. Heaven has torn up the old contract, the one that said you were too old, too forgotten, too late. The Almighty himself has walked into the cosmic courtroom, slammed his gavel down, and declared, "The previous judgment is overturned. We're starting fresh." But here's where most people miss it. Here's where the chosen ones stumble at the threshold of their breakthrough. They think they can carry the new anointing with the old mindset. They think they can walk into divine favor while still apologizing for taking up space. Stop it. Right now, stop it. You cannot shrink back into rooms that God has already moved you out of. You cannot apologize for favor that heaven has officially stamped on your forehead. Every time you downplay what God has done, every time you try to make others comfortable with your elevation, you're insulting the very God who just rewrote the rules for you. Listen to what Jesus declared in Matthew 16:19. "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." Keys, beloved, not suggestions, not polite requests. Keys that open what was closed and close what needs to stay shut. And those keys are now in your weathered hands. But here's the part that's going to shock you. The enemy isn't panicking because you got blessed. He's terrified because you're starting to walk like you believe it. Because there's a difference between carrying favor and wielding it. There's a difference between having authority and exercising it. You want to know why your last decision shifted heaven's plan? Because God was waiting for someone who would stop asking permission to be who He created them to be. He was waiting for a senior saint who would look at their age and say, "This isn't my disqualification, this is my credential." He was waiting for someone who would stop begging for breakthrough and start walking in the authority of the breakthrough that already happened. Think about Moses at the Red Sea. 2 million people behind him, the Egyptian army charging forward, nowhere to run. But God didn't tell Moses to pray harder. He didn't tell him to fast longer. God said in Exodus 14:15, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move forward." Move forward, into the impossible, into what looks like certain death. Because sometimes God doesn't part the sea until you lift the staff. Sometimes the miracle doesn't manifest until you step into the waters. You've been standing at your Red Sea for too long. You've been staring at the impossibility instead of lifting your staff. But I'm here to tell you that the waters are already trembling. The path is already prepared. The only question is, will you move forward? Here's your moment of truth. Here's your Red Sea moment. When God changes the rules, no one can play against you the same way again. The people who used to intimidate you, they've lost their power. The circumstances that used to control you, they've been stripped of their authority. The age that the world uses to count you out, God is using it to crown you. Picture this with me. You're in a stadium. The game has been going on for hours. Everyone thinks they know how this ends. The crowd has already written you off. Your opponents are celebrating prematurely, but then the referee, the highest authority in the building, stops everything. He walks to center court and declares, "We're restarting this game. New rules, same players. But this time, the one you counted out is the one who wins." That's what just happened in your life. The referee is the Almighty God. The game is your destiny. And He just announced that everything you thought was settled is about to be unsettled in your favor. But here's what's going to happen next, and you need to prepare for this. Some people are going to be confused by your sudden confidence. They're going to wonder why you're not playing small anymore. They're going to question your new boundaries, your elevated standards, your refusal to settle for less than God's best. Let them wonder, because you're not playing by their rules anymore. You're playing by heaven's rules. And heaven's rules say that at 70, 80, even 90 years old, you're not at the end, you're at the threshold. Some callings don't begin until the world says they're over. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. 84. While everyone else was going through religious motions, she was positioned for the greatest revelation in human history. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Here's what I need you to understand with crystal clarity. This rewrite isn't temporary. This isn't God giving you a consolation prize before you go home. This is a permanent shift in how heaven operates on your behalf. The board has been rebuilt, the rules have been rewritten, and you can never go back to playing by the old limitations. So when favor shows up and it's coming, don't you dare apologize for it. When doors open that you didn't knock on, walk through them with confidence. When people start treating you differently, don't shrink back into false humility. You're not the same person who went to sleep last night. You woke up under a different covenant. Type, "I receive the rewrite," if you believe this is your confirmation. Because typing those words isn't just engagement, it's agreement with what heaven has already declared. It's your signature on the new contract. And if this word is burning in your chest like holy fire, don't keep it to yourself. Send this to a son, daughter, or friend who needs to know that heaven has shifted the plan. Someone in your life needs to see what it looks like when a chosen one stops apologizing for their anointing. But most importantly, don't just hear this, walk in it. Live like the game has already been tilted in your favor, because it has. The rewrite is complete. The new rules are in effect. And this time, you don't just survive, you reign. But now I need to tell you something that's going to shake you to your very core. Something that will explain why you felt so restless lately, why sleep has been elusive, why your spirit has been stirring like a pot about to boil over. In the throne room of heaven, there are scrolls, ancient scrolls. Revelation 5-8 tells us about golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's holy people. But what they don't tell you in Sunday school is this: every prayer you've ever prayed, every tear you've ever shed, every moment you chose faith over fear, has been recorded on a scroll with your name written in the handwriting of the Almighty Himself. Your scroll, dear one, your assignment, your divine purpose, it's been sealed, waiting, preparing for the exact moment when your heart would align with heaven's timing. And your last decision, that choice you made when everything in you wanted to quit but you said yes to God anyway, that choice didn't just register in heaven, it broke the seal on your scroll. Think about this for a moment. How many nights have you laid in that bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if God had forgotten about you? How many times have you watched younger people step into their callings while you sat in the shadows, convinced your season had passed? How many doctor's appointments, funeral services, and empty nest moments made you believe your story was winding down instead of winding up? You've been living like someone whose assignment was postponed. But I'm here to tell you something that will revolutionize everything you believe about your purpose. Your assignment was never postponed, it was protected. God didn't delay your calling because you weren't ready. He held it back because the world wasn't ready for what He planted inside you. Every year you've lived, every trial you've endured, every mountain you've climbed has been preparation for what's written on that scroll. The wisdom you carry now, the authority that comes from walking through fire, the unshakable faith that's been tested by time, these are the very qualifications heaven was waiting for. Moses was 80 when God called him from the burning bush. 80. When the world would have written him off as past his prime, God was just getting started with him. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah in the temple. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to promise. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your credential. But here's what's happening right now that you need to understand. The scroll with your name on it is opening, not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally opening in the courts of heaven. And when a scroll opens in God's presence, Earth has no choice but to align with what's written inside. This is why everything around you has been shifting. This is why relationships that once fit you now feel foreign. This is why opportunities you never pursued are suddenly presenting themselves. This is why people are looking at you differently, sensing something they can't quite name. The scroll is opening, and its contents are beginning to manifest in your natural circumstances. Your assignment is not postponed, it's activated. Heaven has shifted your timeline from waiting to walking. But let me warn you about something that's about to happen. The enemy knows your scroll is opening. He can sense the shift in the spiritual atmosphere around your life. And he's going to try everything to convince you it's too late, that you're too old, that you've missed your moment. He's going to whisper that assignments are for younger people, that your time has passed, that you should settle into retirement and fade quietly into the background. Don't you dare believe that lie. When Caleb was 85 years old, he didn't ask for a rocking chair. He said, "Give me this mountain." He understood something that this generation has forgotten. The older you get, the more dangerous you become to the kingdom of darkness. You've survived too much, learned too much, and been refined too much to be stopped by the same tactics that worked on you in your youth. Your assignment isn't a consolation prize for faithful service. It's the main event you've been training for your entire life. Every heartbreak taught you compassion. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss taught you what truly matters. Every victory taught you to trust God's timing. And now, all of that training is about to pay off in ways that will leave you breathless. But how do you recognize the scroll when it opens? How do you know when your assignment is activating? Stay with me. I'll show you the unmistakable signs that heaven is moving on your behalf. Because what I'm about to reveal next will help you identify the supernatural fingerprints God is leaving all over your life right now. The signs that your scroll isn't just opening, it's already beginning to unfold its contents into your everyday reality. You'll learn to recognize the divine appointments that feel like coincidences, the favor that seems to come from nowhere, the doors that open without you even knocking. These aren't random blessings, chosen one. These are the contents of your scroll spilling into your natural world. Type, no more delay if you're ready to step into the assignment heaven has unveiled. Because your scroll is open, your timeline has shifted, and your greatest chapter is about to begin. But first, you need to understand exactly what happens when heaven decides to accelerate your destiny. You know what breaks my heart? It's watching God's chosen ones carry shame that was never theirs to begin with. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been hauling around guilt that belonged to your grandfather's drinking problem. You've been apologizing for patterns that started 3 generations before you were even born. You've been whispering, "I'm sorry for DNA you never chose." But what if I told you something so radical it would shatter every lie you've believed about your bloodline? What if your last decision, that moment when you chose God over comfort, faith over fear, didn't just change your future, it rewrote your entire family's history? Listen to me carefully, dear one. You didn't just break free from generational bondage. You became the circuit breaker that stopped the spiritual electricity of destruction from flowing to your children and grandchildren. You became the firewall between the past and the future. Think about your family tree for a moment. Really think about it. Your grandmother who drank herself to sleep every night, trying to numb the pain of a marriage that felt like a prison. Your father who worked 3 jobs but could never provide enough, who died believing he was a failure as a man. Your mother who battled depression so deep she couldn't even look you in the eye some mornings. You inherited their wounds, didn't you? Their fear of not having enough. Their belief that good things happen to other families, not yours. Their whispered conversations about how people like us don't get lucky breaks. You grew up thinking struggle was your spiritual DNA, that poverty was your portion, that broken was just the way your family operated. But God saw something different. He saw a bloodline that had been under attack because the enemy knew if just one person in that lineage ever fully surrendered, if just one soul ever said, "Yes, Lord," with everything they had, the entire trajectory would shift. Not just forward into the future, but backward through time itself. See, when you made that decision, when you chose obedience in that hospital room, when you forgave instead of seeking revenge, when you tithed your last $20, you didn't just plant a seed. You became a spiritual domino that fell backward through your family tree, breaking every curse that tried to claim your descendants. The Bible declares in Exodus 34:7 that the iniquity of the fathers visits the children to the third and fourth generation. But here's what the devil doesn't want you to know. That same verse promises that God's mercy extends to 1,000 generations of those who love him. 1,000. Your yes didn't just lift you. It secured blessing for children not yet born, for great-great-grandchildren whose names you'll never know. You want to know why the warfare got so intense right before your breakthrough? Because hell knew what was at stake. It wasn't just your freedom on the line, it was your entire bloodline's destiny. The enemy threw everything he had at you, because he knew if you made it through, if you chose faith over fear, the generational curse would snap like a guitar string under too much pressure. But you didn't break. You bent, but you didn't break. And now something magnificent is happening in the spiritual realm. Picture a domino chain that's been falling toward destruction for decades. Your grandfather's addiction knocked over your father's confidence. Your father's fear knocked over your childhood security. Your childhood wounds knocked over your early relationships. But then you caught the last domino. You stopped the collapse. And in one moment of radical obedience, you began a rebuilding that runs both backward and forward through time. Right now, your grandmother's spirit is rejoicing in glory because someone finally broke the chain she couldn't break. Your father's shame is being washed away because his child chose what he couldn't choose. Your children who struggle with depression, with anxiety, with that same family fear they're about to experience breakthrough they can't explain because you made a decision in faith. This is why you've felt different lately. This is why old temptations suddenly feel foreign. This is why toxic relationships started falling away without you even trying. You're not the same person who carried 3 generations of trauma on your shoulders. You're the hinge of history. You're the turning point. You're the one who said no more. But here's what's going to shock you. Your breakthrough isn't just personal, it's positional. God didn't just heal you. He positioned you as the patriarch, the matriarch of a new kind of family legacy. Your grandchildren will walk through doors that were locked to your grandparents. Your descendants will carry confidence that your ancestors never knew. They'll speak blessings over their lives because you learned to speak life over yours. Deuteronomy 30:19 declares, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. You chose life, beloved. Not just for yourself, but for bloodlines stretching into eternity. But the enemy isn't done fighting. He's going to try to convince you this is too good to be true. He's going to whisper that your family is too broken, too far gone, too set in their ways. He's going to remind you of every failure, every relapse, every time hope seemed foolish. Don't you dare listen to him. You are not responsible for how fast others change. You're only responsible for holding the door open that you just unlocked. Some of your family members will walk through immediately. Others will take years. Some may not walk through until after you're gone. But because of your decision, the door is open forever. You are the answer to prayers your great-grandmother whispered but never saw answered. You are the breakthrough your family line has been crying out for since before you were born. The curse stops here. The blessing begins now. If you believe your family's story just shifted, if you can feel generations of chains breaking in the spiritual realm, comment. The curse ends here. But knowing you broke the cycle is just the beginning. Because now heaven has to reorganize itself around the new reality you just created. Now let me ask you something that's going to cut deep into your soul, chosen one. Have you noticed it got harder right after your breakthrough? Have you felt the attacks intensify the moment you made that decision to trust God completely? Why is it that the very week you chose faith over fear, everything seemed to fall apart at once? Your health took a hit. Your finances got tighter. People started acting strange around you. That family member who used to support you suddenly turned cold. The phone stopped ringing. The invitations dried up. And you started wondering, did I make the wrong choice? Did I mishear God? Listen to me carefully, dear one. The increased pressure isn't proof you made a mistake. It's proof you made the right choice. Because pressure is proof of promotion. The enemy only attacks what threatens his kingdom. Think about this logically. Why would Satan waste his best ammunition on someone who poses no threat? Why would hell mobilize its forces against someone who's irrelevant? The fact that you're under assault right now is undeniable evidence that your last decision shifted something massive in the spiritual realm. Look at Job. The Bible says in Job 1-8 that God himself pointed Job out to Satan, saying, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him." What happened next? Everything Job owned was destroyed. His children died. His health collapsed. His wife told him to curse God and die. Why? Because Job carried something that terrified the kingdom of darkness. You think you're being punished, but you're actually being promoted. You think you're under attack, but you're actually under assignment. When Daniel chose to pray 3 times a day despite the king's decree, what happened? They threw him into a den of hungry lions. But here's what the enemy didn't count on: the same God who inspired Daniel's decision was the same God who shut the lions' mouths. Daniel's promotion came through the very trial that was meant to destroy him. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him at the burning bush. But those weren't wasted years, they were preparation years. Every day tending sheep in obscurity was God developing the patience Moses would need to lead 2 million complaining Israelites through the desert. Your pressure isn't punishment, it's preparation for something bigger than you can imagine. But here's where it gets deeper, chosen one. Here's the part that will blow your mind. The shaking you're experiencing right now isn't random turbulence, it's tectonic. When massive earthquakes hit California, it's not because the ground is weak, it's because the tectonic plates deep beneath the surface are shifting. The earth trembles because something fundamental is moving at the foundation level. Your life is trembling because heaven just moved your foundation. Everything that used to feel stable suddenly feels uncertain. Relationships that seemed solid are cracking. Situations that felt permanent are dissolving. Opportunities that looked guaranteed are disappearing. And you're standing in the middle of it all, wondering if you're losing your mind. You're not losing your mind. You're gaining your destiny. God is rebuilding your entire foundation, and construction sites are never peaceful. When they demolished the old Yankee Stadium to build a new one, the noise was deafening for months. Dust filled the air. Traffic was rerouted. Neighbors complained. But nobody questioned whether something magnificent was being built. They could see the cranes, the steel beams, the evidence of construction. The chaos in your life right now isn't destruction, it's construction. God is tearing down everything that can't support where He's taking you next. This is why your old friends don't understand you anymore. This is why your family is acting strange. This is why opportunities that used to excite you now feel small and suffocating. You've outgrown the old foundation, and God is building you a new one. But let me tell you something that will give you chills. The enemy is panicking right now. He's throwing everything he's got at you because he knows something you're just beginning to understand. Your last decision didn't just change your personal circumstances, it shifted the spiritual atmosphere for everyone connected to you. Your children who walked away from God, the prayer you prayed over them 3 months ago just activated. Your grandchildren who've never known real faith, they're about to witness miracles through your testimony. That generational curse of poverty that's haunted your family for 150 years, your obedience just broke it. This is why the warfare is so intense. This is why you feel like you're fighting invisible battles, because you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for your bloodline. The enemy knows that if he can't stop you now, if he can't convince you to quit before the foundation is complete, it's over. Your family tree is about to produce fruit it's never produced before. Your lineage is about to carry blessings it's never carried. So when the ground shakes beneath your feet, Don't run for cover. Stand firm, because the shaking is not your downfall, it's the evidence that the ground beneath you is being rebuilt by God's own hand. Every tremor is proof that something permanent is being established. Every wobble is evidence that your old limitations are being demolished. Every moment of instability is confirmation that God is building you something that can't be shaken. Isaiah 54:11 declares, "Afflicted city, lashed by storms and not comforted, I will rebuild you with stones of turquoise, your foundations with lapis lazuli." God doesn't just repair your foundation, He rebuilds it with precious stones. If you've been feeling the shaking, if you've been wondering whether you can survive the reconstruction, don't panic. The master builder knows exactly what he's doing. Drop still standing in the comments right now. It's not just a statement, it's your testimony that God's construction project in your life is right on schedule. But here's what you need to understand about what happens next. The shaking phase is almost over. The foundation is almost complete. And when God finishes building, what emerges will be so magnificent that everyone who witnessed your wilderness will have to admit they're seeing the hand of the Almighty. Are you ready to discover what God builds when He uses earthquake technology to reshape your destiny? Now listen carefully, chosen one, because I'm about to explain something that will make your heart race and your spirit leap. You've been waiting for lightning bolts from heaven, haven't you? You've been expecting God to move with earthquakes and burning bushes that nobody could miss. But what if I told you that the Almighty has been confirming your shift in the most ordinary moments of your Tuesday afternoon? You see, Moses saw a bush, not a throne, yet heaven was in the bush. David heard a whisper, not thunder, yet the kingdom was in the whisper. And right now, dear friend, God is speaking your confirmation through circumstances so subtle that only those with spiritual eyes will recognize them. Let me ask you something that might cut deep. Have you noticed that some of your oldest friendships have started feeling different? People you used to call every Sunday suddenly seem distant. That neighbor who always waved from across the street now barely makes eye contact. Your own children might feel like strangers when you try to share what God has been showing you. And if you're honest, it's been breaking your heart, hasn't it? But what if I told you that what feels like rejection is actually relocation? What if those relationships drifting away isn't God abandoning you, but God repositioning you? Listen to what Jesus said in Luke 14:26. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple." That sounds harsh until you understand that Jesus was talking about seasons of divine separation. Sometimes God has to pull you out of familiar circles because the people who knew the old you can't handle the anointed you. Your loneliness isn't punishment, beloved. It's preparation. But here's where it gets supernatural. While some doors are closing, others are swinging wide open in ways that make no earthly sense. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You walked into your doctor's office expecting bad news, but somehow your Medicare covered more than it should have. You called about your property taxes, ready to fight, but the clerk on the phone was unusually helpful, almost like they were looking for ways to help you. You went to the grocery store expecting to count every penny, but the cashier applied discounts you didn't even know existed. These aren't coincidences, dear one. These are confirmations. When God shifts the spiritual atmosphere around your life, even secular systems start bending in your favor. Why? Because Proverbs 21:1 declares, "In the Lord's hand the king's heart is a stream of water that he channels toward all who please him." The hearts of strangers are being channeled toward you because heaven has marked you. But here's the sign that will shock you the most. You've been feeling restless lately, haven't you? Like you're wearing shoes 3 sizes too small. Like the life that used to fit you perfectly now feels cramped, suffocating, wrong. You wake up in the same house you've lived in for 30 years, but something feels off. You sit in the same church pew you've occupied for decades, but the sermons feel hollow. You have the same conversations with the same people, but your spirit is screaming for something more. Don't panic. That restlessness isn't depression. It's not old age making you cranky. That discomfort is divine confirmation that you've outgrown your old container. God is stretching your capacity, expanding your vision, preparing you for assignments that require a bigger version of who you used to be. Think about this. When a snake is ready to grow, its old skin doesn't just fall off naturally. The snake has to struggle against it, push against the limitations, feel uncomfortable in what used to protect it. The discomfort isn't the problem, it's the process. You're not losing your mind, chosen one. You're shedding your old identity. Isaiah 43:19 confirms this. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. The Hebrew word for new here doesn't mean fresh or recent. It means something that has never existed before. God isn't giving you an improved version of your old life. He's creating something that has never been seen on this earth. And here's the part that will leave you breathless. These signs, the relationship shifts, the unexpected favor, the holy restlessness, they're not happening to you, they're happening through you. Your obedience has created a ripple effect that's touching every person connected to your bloodline. Your grown children may not understand why they suddenly feel drawn to pray more. Your grandchildren might start asking spiritual questions out of nowhere. Your siblings could find themselves making different choices without knowing why. You didn't just change your own trajectory, beloved. You rewrote your family's destiny. But let me shock you with this truth. Most people miss their confirmation because they're looking for fireworks when God is speaking in whispers. They want burning bushes when heaven is speaking through burning hearts. They want audible voices when the Almighty is moving through circumstances so ordinary that only faith can recognize them. Stop waiting for the spectacular. Your confirmation is hidden in the mundane. Heaven is confirming your shift through Medicare representatives who go the extra mile, through strangers who smile at you for no reason, through unexpected checks in the mail, through dreams that feel more real than your waking hours. The question that will determine your destiny is this: will you recognize heaven's whispers, or will you keep demanding heaven's shouts? Because what I'm about to tell you next will reveal exactly why God chose to confirm your calling through such ordinary means, and why recognizing these signs is the key to stepping into the extraordinary life that's been waiting for you all along. Dear chosen one, look at yourself right now. Really look, not with your eyes, with your spirit, because something has shifted in you so dramatically that even you don't recognize who's staring back anymore. You wake up some mornings feeling like a stranger in your own skin, don't you? The person who used to worry about everyone's opinion, where did they go? The one who apologized for taking up space, who shrunk back when others raised their voices, that version of you has vanished. And in their place stands someone you're still learning to know. This isn't confusion, beloved. This is confirmation. You have been transformed by fire, and the ashes of who you used to be are still settling around your feet. But here's what's breaking my heart tonight. You've been mourning the old you like they died. You've been grieving the familiar version of yourself that could fit into small spaces, that could tolerate disrespect, that could smile through betrayal. You miss that person because at least you knew how they worked. But listen to me carefully, that person had to die for this one to be born. And who you are now, who you're becoming, it's so magnificent that even heaven had to recalibrate to accommodate your new frequency. Every line on your face tells a story now, not of defeat, of victory. Every gray hair isn't evidence of decline, it's a crown of wisdom, earned through battles that would have destroyed weaker souls. The scars you've been hiding, they're not damage anymore, they're design. Divine design etched by the Master's hand. Look at your hands. Really look at them. Those aren't just hands that held grandchildren and wiped tears and worked jobs that barely paid the bills. Those are hands that have been consecrated by suffering, anointed by obedience, marked by the fingerprints of the Almighty Himself. You think you're getting older? The psalmist had something to say about that. Psalm 92:14 declares with thunderous authority, "They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, not withered, not forgotten, not put out to pasture. Fresh and green in your 70s, 80s, 90s. But here's the shocking truth the enemy doesn't want you to discover. You are not diminished, you are distilled. Everything weak has been burned away. Everything false has been exposed and removed. Everything that wasn't truly you has been stripped off like old paint. What remains? Pure gold, refined silver. A warrior who's learned that the safest place in any storm is the center of God's will. You want to know why people look at you differently now? Why some can't stand to be around you while others are drawn like magnets? Because you're no longer carrying the frequency of fear. You're broadcasting something they can't name, but desperately need the presence of someone who has walked through hell and came out praising God. Your voice carries different weight now, doesn't it? When you speak, rooms get quiet. When you pray, things move. When you declare the promises of God, demons tremble because they recognize the authority of someone who has been tested and proven faithful. This is why the loneliness has been so intense. This is why familiar places feel foreign. This is why even your own family sometimes looks at you with confusion. You're not who you used to be, and they don't know how to categorize the new you. But God knows exactly who you are. He's the one who orchestrated this metamorphosis. He's the one who allowed the pressure that created the diamond. He's the one who turned your mourning into dancing, your ashes into beauty, your captivity into praise. Heaven has made you stronger by fire, sharper by loss, brighter by scars. You survived what was meant to kill you. You forgave what should have made you bitter. You kept believing when believing made no logical sense. And now you stand as living proof that God still performs miracles in human flesh, walking testimony that the best wine is saved for last, breathing evidence that what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. You are the miracle you've been praying for. You are the breakthrough your ancestors cried out for. You are the answer to prayers whispered over your bloodline before you were ever born. So stop apologizing for who you've become. Stop trying to shrink back into clothes that no longer fit. Stop explaining away the anointing that rests on you like a mantle of fire. Tonight, I want you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. I want you to look in the mirror, really look, and declare out loud, I am living proof of heaven's rewrite. Say it until your spirit believes it. Say it until the atmosphere shifts. Say it until every lying voice that told you your best days were behind you falls silent before the truth of who you really are. Because what happens when someone finally sees themselves through heaven's eyes? Everything changes. And what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how that change is about to manifest in ways that will leave the world speechless. Dear chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter together, I need you to carry these truths with you like precious jewels in your heart. Remember this: your final decision didn't just change your circumstances, it shifted heaven's entire strategy. You are not the same person who started watching this message. Something fundamental has been rewired in your spiritual DNA tonight. The mirror reflects someone heaven has been preparing for decades, and what you see now is not decline, it's divine design. Remember that every scar tells a story of survival, every wrinkle is a crown of wisdom, and every year you've lived has been building toward this moment when God says, now you're ready for what I've been preparing. But more than that, beloved, remember, you are never walking this journey alone. Even when the road feels uncertain, even when the breakthrough seems delayed, even when doubt whispers lies in your ear, the Creator of the universe is working behind the scenes on your behalf. He's moving mountains you can't see, opening doors you haven't found yet, and orchestrating blessings you can't even imagine. And right here, in this community of believers, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your struggles, who believe in your calling, and who are ready to stand with you in prayer. We're not just viewers on a screen, we're a family, united by faith, connected by hope, and bound together by the love of Christ. So let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. Now that you know heaven has rewritten its plan because of your obedience, How will you walk differently tomorrow morning when you wake up? Before you answer that question, I want to pray over you. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to close your eyes and let these words wash over your spirit like healing oil. Heavenly Father, I place my hand on the shoulder of every person who has heard this message tonight. Lord, you see their hearts, you know their struggles, you've counted every tear they've cried in secret. But Father, you also see their crown, you know their calling, you've already written their victory story. God, I pray that you would silence every voice of doubt that has whispered you're not enough. I pray that you would break every chain of limitation that has held them captive. I pray that you would open their eyes to see the doors you're already opening, the opportunities you're already creating, the favor you're already releasing. Father, place your hand upon their shoulders right now. Let them feel your presence. Let them know that they are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond doubt, and destined for greatness beyond their wildest dreams. Give them the courage to step into their new identity, the wisdom to steward their blessings, and the faith to trust your timing even when they can't see the full picture. Heal their bodies, restore their relationships, multiply their resources, and use their story to heal others who are walking similar paths. Lord, let this be the night everything changes. Let this be the moment their struggle turns to strength, their doubt turns to declaration, their fear turns to faith. May they wake up tomorrow, not as survivors, but as victors, not as forgotten, but as chosen, not as diminished, but as divinely appointed. In the mighty name of Jesus, who wore a crown of thorns so they could wear a crown of glory, I seal this prayer. Let your will be done in their lives. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share how this message has impacted your heart. What shifted in your spirit tonight? What are you believing God for in this new season? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you felt God speaking directly to you tonight, type "Heaven rewrote my story" in the comments. Let this community surround you with prayer and encouragement. And please, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life right now who's questioning their worth, doubting their purpose, wondering if their best days are behind them. They need to know what you now know, that God specializes in rewriting stories in the final chapters. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the sacred chambers of your soul. Thank you for being brave enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, your story isn't over. It's just beginning its greatest chapter. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We're building something beautiful here, a community where faith grows, hope is restored, and destinies are fulfilled. Your presence matters, your story matters, you matter. Until we meet again in the next message, walk in the authority of who you are. You are chosen, you are loved, you are never alone. The rewrite has begun, and your greatest chapter starts now.